This is Jason's Amazing Race Recap 37, episode number 8. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this podcast. Today, I'm going to discuss the Amazing Race Season 37, Episode 8, and what an episode it was. There were some classic Amazing Race mistakes and a colossal comeback from one of the teams. So lock the door, crank it up to 11, and grab your favorite adult beverage, because you don't want to be distracted for this one. As always, I'm your host, Jason Mogul. We last saw the racers in Bulgaria after a heart-pounding finish that left Nick and Mike outstanding in their field. Well, literally outstanding in their field. They were so close to staying ahead of Carson and Jack, who had made some major navigational blunders. But several factors allowed Carson and Jack to pass the brothers and keep racing. Nick and Mike endured a Lena-like finish when Phil had to come out to them and eliminate them after 6 hours of looking for that needle in a haystack. They ended their time on the race with gratitude and dignity. After the pit stop, Alyssa and Josiah left first at 7:34 a.m. They tore open the clue, which contained route info to Sofia about 25 miles away. They had to navigate and drive themselves in the same Ford four-door hatchback, or, as it looks to me, a station wagon, that they had the previous leg to get their next clue. Teams had the opportunity to go for an express pass, which allows them to skip a future task of their choice sometime before the end of leg 10. Brett and Mark tore open their clue about 25 minutes later, and Jonathan and Anna, they did the same in third place about an hour after Alyssa and Josiah. Alyssa and Josiah, they decided to try for the express pass since they had a small lead, but were willing to give up their lead to get it. They had no idea what they had to do to earn it. Neither Brett and Mark nor Jonathan and Anna attempted to get the express pass because of the time gap between teams, assuming the team before them went after it. On their way to Sofia, Alyssa and Josiah revealed that they had $400,000 worth of student loan debt between them. $400,000. Yikes! That's an astronomical amount to be burdened with when just starting off in life. So they were really motivated to win the $1 million. At least they had a good plan to pay it off. Beat out 10,000 other applicants onto the Amazing Race, and then beat 13 other teams in a race around the world. Oh yeah, people do it all the time. Anyway, Brett and Mark joked about navigation, and in the third car, Jonathan was upset that they were an hour behind because they got their car stuck in the ditch. But if you recall, he's the one who got the car stuck in the ditch. Most of the time, Anna drove while Jonathan did the navigating. But this particular time, he was driving, and he was the one who drove past the designated parking area and straight into a ditch. Speaking of navigation, Alyssa and Josiah navigated by using a map, and so did Jonathan and Anna. But Brett and Mark stopped and asked a local for directions. I cover navigation in more depth in my companion podcast called Jason's Amazing Race Insights. Both methods have their pluses and minuses, but I think the edge goes to a team who can read and use a map properly. Alyssa and Josiah arrived at their destination and learned they had to walk across burning hot coals to earn the express pass. It looked like a rectangular bed of glowing campfire coals that was about 10 to 15 feet long. Alyssa was excited, but Josiah had some anxiety about it. He said he didn't like hot things, not even hot chocolate. He likes lukewarm, but not hot. I tell you, I too would have some issues with doing that. But he psyched himself up for it as they took their shoes and socks off. The camera showed stacks of burning logs and burning candles to set the scene and build tension. A local demonstrated how it's done and to show that it can be done. Alyssa went first because Josiah insisted on it. She walked with toes up, without stopping, and made it across in 8 steps, saying it wasn't bad at all, to keep Josiah calm. Now it was Josiah's turn. For the express pass. He stood at the edge, hesitated for a moment, then walked quickly across the red, burning embers, saying, "I'm on the beach, I'm on the beach." We all know what that's like walking across hot sand in bare feet. Note, if you ever make it on the Amazing Race, remember to take your asbestos socks, just in case. And with that, Alyssa and Josiah earned themselves an express pass. Let's see if they need it to keep ahead of the competition or to prevent their elimination. It cost them 40 minutes of time, and they assumed they had moved from first to third as a result. Meanwhile, Han and Holden left the pit stop next, and then Melinda and Erica, about 2.5 hours behind the leaders. Now in first place, Brett and Mark arrived at the clue box, which directed them to a bridge above a lake, where a priest would toss a golden cross into the water. Both team members would need to wade into the lake, retrieve the cross, go back to the bridge, and give it back to the priest for good luck. It's an annual event with locals forming a small semicircle in the lake with musicians to celebrate loudly as teams found and secured the cross in the semicircle. Phil said it was an annual event, celebrated every year. He didn't explain why or how this unusual event got started. But from a race perspective, some clothing would get wet as a result, which means some teams would have to either wear or lug around wet items in or on their backpacks until they dried. Brett and Mark entered the cold water. They were also barefoot. Retrieving the cross was not a hard task, but I'm sure the cold water was quite a contrast to the heat of Dubai they experienced just a couple of days earlier. After they were done, the priest blessed them and gave them their next clue. It told them to go to Russian Monument Square and look for a Klek shop to get their next clue. A Klek shop is a basement window or a bunker that was converted into a convenience store with snacks, drinks, gum, etc. that locals sold as a way to earn money in the transition from communism to capitalism. The clue also told them they must not take a taxi for the rest of the leg. They could use a bus or rely on good old shoe leather to get around, but no taxis. This is where they turned in their Fords and began hoofing it. No wet clothes allowed in taxis or rental cars. Anyway, Brett and Mark decided to run to the next clue due to the uncertainty of bus schedules. Then, finally, Carson and Jack left the pit stop in last place, an hour and a half behind Melinda and Erica, which meant there was a 3-hour, 45-minute gap between first place and last place. But their spirits were high, and they had confidence in their abilities. Alyssa and Josiah arrived next at the lake, not in third place like they thought, but in second place. They also waded into the water barefoot and with minimal clothing. Did you notice Josiah bump his head on a pole as he exited the water to return the cross? He had his head down as he climbed the stairs and just didn't see the pole. But that must be a common occurrence because there was a foam pad at that exact spot on the pole. Safety first. Jonathan and Anna retrieved the cross next, in the shirts, pants, and shoes that they were wearing that day. They definitely were going to have wet clothes to carry around. Meanwhile, Melinda and Erica were having some navigational issues and began to bicker, the first time we've seen that from them, and they had to stop to get directions, even though they had a big map with them in the car. When Brett and Mark arrived at the Russian Monument Square, they had trouble finding the Klek shop because it was hidden by graffiti-covered, hinged, box-like doors. It just didn't look like a shop. It looked like a storage shed. It was marked with the Amazing Race colors, but that was small and easily missed. To patronize it, shoppers had to bend down to pay for their items through the basement window. The shopkeeper gave Brett and Mark their clue, which told them to go to Sophia University Library for their next clue. They decided to take the bus, and I'm guessing that's due to being tired out from all the running they did from the lake. Alyssa and Josiah arrived at the Klek shop next and had the same trouble finding it. Alyssa saw a highly stylized AR-37 for Amazing Race 37 painted in Amazing Race colors on the door in graffiti-like fashion and deduced it was the place. They decided to run to the library because Josiah said he could run all damn day. Jonathan and Anna then arrived and passed the shop several times before finding it. At this point, I was curious if teams changed their wet clothes after they waded in the lake, but it appears to me they did not. They continued to race in wet clothes, and Jonathan and Anna even wearing the same wet shoes. I'm not sure if that was planned, but it would have made the racers uncomfortable. And it wasn't particularly emphasized during the race either. It was just something I noticed, but no one else seemed to talk about it. Anyway, Brett and Mark arrived at the library where they learned teams had to use a decoder wheel to translate Cyrillic to English. The decoder wheel had several moving parts with Cyrillic symbols on 3 rotatable circles. But no English letters were visible, so the trick was to find out how to get the English version. Something was missing, and teams had to find that missing piece. Mark saw that the English words were on the back, and as they lined up the Cyrillic letters on the front, it revealed the English version on the back. Very clever and very sneaky. And Han and Holden arrived at the lake and retrieved the cross, as did Melinda and Erica. But Erica, while walking and perhaps jostling the clue in her hand, misread the clue to say you must take a taxi the rest of the leg. She missed the word not in there. Melinda chimed in, "Thank God." Even Erica looked at the clue twice. Uh-oh, a classic Amazing Race mistake. Erica broke the cardinal rule of Amazing Race, which is read the clue. Off they went to find a taxi. In the taxi, Erica wished that maybe someone would make a bigger mistake than they did. Nope. Taking a taxi, when told not to, would be very hard to overcome. Meanwhile, Brett and Mark figured out the translation, which is from the Bible, the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. The librarian gave them their next clue, which was to go to the Museum of Socialist Art. Ooh boy. Can you tell I'm not a fan of communism or the former Soviet Union? Not at all. Anyway, Alyssa and Josiah arrived at the library and bragged about how they had practiced for this kind of task, like puzzles and escape rooms. They knew something was missing and thought it might be a book, since it was a library. They saw a ladder, which was used to get books from high shelves, and thought it was there for a specific reason. Alyssa climbed the ladder to a window to see if that would lead to a clue, but saw nothing and said out the window, "Help me!" I liked how they were working through a creative process to try to figure out the code, but they were overcomplicating it. The answer was right there in their hands. Han and Holden found the Kleck shop right away and got right back on the bus for the library. Jonathan and Anna arrived at the library and joined a stressed Alyssa and Josiah working on the code. Way behind the others, Carson and Jack waded in the lake for the cross, got their clue, and took the bus to the Kleck shop. On the bus, they just happened to see the bearded homeowner from the previous leg who weighed the firewood Carson and Jack and others carried on the woodstack detour. He explained that a Kleck shop means you squat down to get your items. What are the chances they'd ever meet that guy again? Back at the library, Jonathan figured out the decoder wheel and kept it from Alyssa and Josiah, who were considering using their express pass. Jonathan and Anna translated the message and on their way out told Alyssa and Josiah to look on the back of the decoder wheel. Jonathan helped them because he considered it an investment that may pay off in the future. But he allowed Alyssa and Josiah to keep their express pass. At this point, Jonathan and Anna were in second place, with Alyssa and Josiah in third. Let's make a note of that for the future. At the Kleck shop, Melinda and Erica had trouble finding it, bickered about it, and kept calling the shop a kelp shop instead of Kleck shop. After getting some help from a local, they found the shop, hopped in their second taxi, and went to the library, Erica bragging about how good she was at reading the clue. Han and Holden arrived at the library and were stumped by the decoder wheel. Melinda and Erica arrived there next. Carson and Jack found the collect shop and then went off to the library. Brett and Mark, in the lead, found the Museum of Socialist Art, and the clue told them to go to the Central Military Club. It serves the Bulgarian army, but also is an important cultural center in the city. But the surprise to me was that Alyssa and Josiah somehow passed Jonathan and Anna for second place. Back at the library, Carson and Jack showed up while Han and Holden and Melinda and Erica were working together on the cipher. Now, this begins the most dramatic sequence of events on this episode. Working alone, Carson and Jack figured out the cipher fairly quickly. Being gamers, this kind of puzzle was one that fit well with their skills. But Holden saw Jack turn the decoder wheel over, so he now knew the secret to solving the puzzle too. But instead of helping Melinda and Erica, like they had been, they kept that info to themselves. When Melinda and Erica left the room to check their answer with the librarian, Han and Holden and Carson and Jack began to work together, although Carson and Jack were reluctant to do so. Here is the first time that I can recall that teams played the game beyond the game offensively this season to get an advantage over another. Han and Holden abandoned their alliance with Melinda and Erica to join another. Melinda and Erica's guess at the translation was comical. It was a series of gibberish, letters all strung together. They had no idea, but they said they were close, not even. Han and Holden translated first and got their clue. Carson and Jack soon followed. But Holden decided to tell Melinda and Erica to flip over their wheel as a sign of his honest play. Not really honest, but not really dishonest either, since they only worked with teams they thought would help them, switching allegiances to suit their needs. Carson and Jack were not happy, since they were the first ones of the three teams to figure it out. Now, we see a transition from teams playing nice to something more aggressive and competitive. I hope to see more of that in the future. As I have said before, after the second U-turn, I expected teams to be more aggressive and less helpful with one another. At the Central Military Club, Mark learned the next task was a roadblock, to learn and perform a dance routine. This is what he did for a living in Las Vegas. He quickly learned the routine and performed it correctly the first time. Off he and Brent went to the pit stop mat to find Phil outside a cathedral. Josiah performed the dance routine and completed it after 3 attempts. Jonathan and Anna arrived, and Anna was also successful in 3 attempts. Melinda and Erica finished the cipher puzzle and took their 3rd taxi. Teams followed, and it was Carson and Jack who passed both Melinda and Erica and Han and Holden to get in 4th place. Jack finished the dance after 2 attempts. Holden also took 2 tries, and Melinda finished after just 1 try and left, taking their 4th taxi. At the pit stop, Brett and Mark were first, winning $7,500 each. They navigated well, were quick to figure out the cipher, and crushed the dance routine. Alyssa and Josiah were second, although they had the look of doom until being helped by Jonathan and Anna, who came in 3rd. In 4th place were Carson and Jack, coming from being 3 hours behind on the last leg to pass 3 teams. It was one of the great comebacks in Amazing Race history. They did a better job of navigating to the Museum of Socialist Art than Han and Holden did, who came in 5th. And it was Melinda and Erica who came in last and were eliminated. This after taking taxis around the city while others either ran or took buses. While it ended up not mattering, I read in an online interview where Erica said they would have had a 30-minute penalty for each taxi ride. That meant it would have been a total of 2 hours worth of penalties. Once Erica misread the clue, she and Melinda didn't have a chance of staying in the race. That's why read the clue is so important to the Amazing Race. And with their elimination, an opportunity to set an Amazing Race record also passed this season, and that is the oldest person to win the Amazing Race. It's currently held by Dave O'Leary, who won it with a son when he was 59 years old. Melinda had a chance to beat that, but no longer. Bulgaria looked amazing to me. Clean city, beautiful countryside, and friendly people. But you can still see the influence of the Soviet Union 35 years after its breakup. With the Russian Monument Square and the Museum of Socialist Art, the past is still there. But we also saw Western influence too. There were direction signs in English. The Kleck shop had American products for sale in it. They were driving Ford cars. And there was a wine shop with a sign that said, "All you need is love and a bottle of wine," in English. It made a good first impression on its debut on The Amazing Race. And I wouldn't mind if they went back again later, sometime in the future. So there are 5 teams left now. Will we see Jonathan and Anna come to regret their decision to help Alyssa and Josiah, who also still have their express passes? As I have said many times, the team that helps another gets beaten by the team they help. And will we see a more aggressive play between the teams as they compete for those coveted top 3 final spots? Especially between Carson and Jack and Han and Holden? I'm looking forward to that. Well, that's all for today's action-packed episode. It seems there was a lot of running around and numerous places they visited in just one city. Thanks for listening, and join me next time for Jason's Amazing Race Recap 37, episode number 9, as I explore what happens to our racers as they travel to Italy. See you then.